Hello, everyone, and welcome back once more. Now, Wendy and I are going to take a little bit of a detour for the next few chats that we're doing, and really going to talk about just really sort of pull together a piece of work on Ascension and where we currently are at the moment. And it's really sort of based around this book, which has been out a year or so now. It's just pulling that together because it feels like, there's an awful lot going on at the moment energetically. There's big shifts happening, and we really are in the eye of the storm in many ways at the moment, and maybe just gaining some clarity, doing this as a coherent piece, will hopefully be helpful to you. That's the idea, isn't it, Wendy?
That is the idea indeed. Well, I'm looking forward to this. We
And
think
then,
it might be a series of four.
yeah, and there's the book for backup if you really want to, dive in a bit further and explore it. But the reality is, and this is something that I've known for so long now, 10, 15 years, is that there is a science to ascension. That there is a process. It's not just spiritual airy fairy or anything like that. And I got that understanding really from deep diving into Egyptian stuff, into Egyptian spirituality, and particularly the early Egyptian histories, not the later ones. It was very clear that by the later ones it had all got a bit messed up, and I understand why now, having dived into the histories of that period. But you know it is about being spiritual, but there is also and maintaining that or reattaining that connection to source, but and being in service to others. So that's that's a big spot, a big part of the process. We can't begin the ascension process if we're very much fractured, if we're service to self. It's all about us, and it's all about what we want, and um so you need that element of spirituality, but there is a defined process to it that can be followed. And it was taught very precisely in the Egyptian temples. And there are periods of time that particularly open up, and we're in one of them, or just in the process of beginning to come out of one of them at this moment, which are called stellar activation cycles, where the ability for not just individual ascension but also planetary ascension really expands, because the universal stargates throughout the different levels of our galaxy, our universal time matrix structure, all align and open up. Or that's what should happen. There's lots of reasons why it hasn't happened for the last few stellar activation cycles, but that's a bit of a digression. So we'll put that aside for another time. But that's what should happen, is there should be this universal multidimensional alignment of stargates that open, and effectively almost a planetary ascension, or anyone who's ready can take place. Now, that doesn't mean to say, and that comes around every 25, 26,000 years, something like that. So, I mean, you don't have to wait 25, 26,000 years, sort of do your work and wait till the next bus comes along, as it were. There are ways that people within that time period, that there were ways known, and there were passageways, interdimensional passageways that were used for people who went through the teachings and did the inner work, and did the refining of the light body, and the accretion of frequencies and things like that that's needed to move from one level to another, could then move through into the next layer. So from here, it would be moving from the 3D levels of the ego personality matrix into the higher levels of the soul matrix, and that would be a movement through to 5D Earth. And that was achieved through places like the Great Pyramid, where something called the Ark of the Covenant portal passage was stationed for a period of time. It got shut down eventually because of the kind of abuse that went on there. And that abuse actually really was put in place by the so-called Egyptian god called Thoth, or Toth, as some people say it. And there were highly developed humans called Keepers of the Blue Flame, who were running what were called Blue Flame initiations, which were part of the Ascension process. And Thoth interfered in those, shall we say. I mean, it's a bit of a story, which maybe we'll keep for another day, but he basically interfered in them, and something was introduced called the Flaming Blue Sword of Michael initiation. And the Flaming Blue Sword of Michael initiation basically shut this down, because it's a gender splitting, where you've probably heard me talk about the progression of or the development of the 6D, 7D wings within the light body. The Flaming Blue Sword of Michael absolutely split that, and you know, it's an energetic implant that goes in and prevents that progression happening. So the ascending individual is absolutely stopped in their tracks, and it's worse than that, you know, because it takes them off on very much the wrong path. So it was massive abuse, and it shut down all of these portal passageways at that time, because there was no means of rescuing it. Things on the earth were going from bad to worse. So that's one aspect of it. When we come back to the personal aspect, I think the next question really is, well, what are we trying to do? Okay,
Yeah.
stargates and, you know, portal passages and, you know, things like this, but what is it we're trying to do in this process? What does ascension really mean? And it's an embodiment process. It's not about, you know, sort of becoming a wisp of something that disappears off, and because when we are fully functioning, we should be able to travel multidimensionally within our body. So it's a process of embodying energies within us. But you've heard me talk about how we're really very digressed at various levels. Our DNA has been unplugged, is one of the phrases people use. You know, I think of it like an old-fashioned switchboard, you know, those plug and play switchboards. And it literally is just like that, you know, 95 to 97%, it depends upon what you read, of our DNA is what's called junk DNA, which means it's just unplugged and not working. So when, you know, you just think about it, when you plug all of that back in, you know, what kind of a being are you going to be when all of that's activated again? And that is what we're trying to do in the ascension process, really. We are trying to get back to who we truly are. We are trying to reactivate all of this dormant DNA to become once more the multidimensional being that we were designed to be. You know, and this is called a Christos template, or 12-strand DNA template, which is also called, there's lots of names for all of these things. You know, I'm going to give you some of them, because you know, I kind of interchangeably use them, and people can go, is that the same thing as? But Diamond Sun DNA template is the same thing as a 12-strand template, is the same thing as a Christos template, effectively, which means that you know, you are holding and running 12th dimensional frequency energies within your body. You have brought together all of the splits, all of the digressions, all of the problems within the template have been cleared and sorted out, and you are back in your divine blueprint. That's another phrase for it. It's the divine blueprint, the 12-strand DNA divine blueprint. So we are we are basically taking something, you know, where we are now, which is somewhat beaten and battered. It's like an old jalopy, basically, and we're trying to, you know, we're working on turning it into a bright, shiny new E-type Jag or something. And yeah, I mean, it's a big process because so much has been done to us over particularly the last 20 to 25,000 years. This last stellar activation cycle has been incredibly hard on the human race, and it's what I refer to, and others I've seen referred to as really the dark age or the dark eon for the human race. This last 20 to 25,000 years. But we are coming out of it. We are beginning to, you know, we've hit rock bottom and we're beginning to come back out of it. So understanding what it is we're trying to do can be very, very helpful in charting our path through it. So
yeah.
Yeah, let's try to understand very briefly why our DNA got to that stage. And, you know, in an understanding, a basic understanding of epigenetics can help us here, because the science of epigenetics tells us that our environment influences our genes, our DNA effectively. You know, things switch on or switch off, or code for this or code for that, or whatever it might be, depending upon our environment. And that environment is not just like, you know, me sitting in this room. It's obviously the world outside, but it's also the world inside. It's the mental, it's all the mental chatter, it's the beliefs, how I, you know, whether I beat myself up or I feel good about myself. It's obviously the food I put into my body that will also change that. So there's lots of things that affect the DNA, either for better or for worse. And we live in a world that has been, at an energetic level, twisted. The energy frameworks have been twisted and mucked about with. That puts us on the back foot, and that has caused DNA digression. We are now at this particular time, you know, in a period where they are trying frantically to poison us and to poison the planet, because again, it's going to keep our DNA in a very digressed state. You know, as we're trying to push and move out of it, it's kind of like they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at us to try and make sure that not only do they keep us where they want us, but even, you know, take us even further down. It's like they treat us like animals on a farm. And you've got to think of that, you know, this is the way they look at us. This is the way they consider us. We are not human beings. We are not beings that are worthy of their respect and worthy of empathy and things like that. They think of us as animals to be farmed, animals they can use. And if there's, in the same way that you see there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of abuse in our farming practices now with animals.
Yeah.
And somehow it doesn't seem to bother the people who are doing this, you know. When you the chicken sheds and the intensive farming and the what do they call them, you know, the pig crates, I mean, there's just awful things go on, and as long as people, you know, someone's making money out of it, there doesn't seem to be any conscience around it. Well, it's the same thing happening with us from those who are treating us like farm animals. It's kind of like, you know, some of them are maybe will give us a little more leeway. They let us out in the meadow occasionally, you know, so we can spring around. But if they need to bring us inside and treat us badly, that's just what they'll do. And at the moment, that is what they're doing, because we're escaping the farm. So they're busy trying to lock every barn door and every gate and everything to keep us in.
And presumably the aim is not for making money in this analogy, in the actual battery farming it is. What's the motivation for them? Remind us all for why they do it to us.
Assimilation of energy.
Okay.
I mean, there's something called loosh, which is uh, it's a particular type of energy. They harvest our life force. They harvest our energy, they harvest our life force, and not just us, but also the planet as well. You'll have heard me talking about those with fallen consciousness who are not connected to source.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're not part of the eternal flows, the eternal streams of life force energy that come from source that we take in, return back to source. There's that continual flow through.
Yeah.
They're not part of that, so they're on running what is called a bi-wave loop, which means that the energy they have within themselves is finite. It's all that they have, unless they can, plug themselves into thee and me and charge up their battery again constantly at our expense. And that's what happens. That's our value to them as farm animals. And there's also, the type of DNA we have, that is currency at a galactic level. There is currency in human DNA. There's currency in human trafficking across certain galactic empires, for slaves and God knows what, dreadful things, so there's all sorts of, think of the ways we use farm animals. There's and then just, put a human being in that place.
Wow. I mean, it's huge, isn't it? And, the fact that we've had this sort of 26,000 year cycle, and we were talking about, that's when everything lines up in the ideal. Am I right in thinking that we happen to be there right now? Is that right?
We are just coming out of it. We started into the stellar activation cycle in the early 2000s. And that cycle is, I say the actual opening of the stargates is all but over now.
Okay.
Which is not a problem because the Earth herself has made a shift, fine, and it hasn't been. I mean, we could get into a lot of digression here, but it hasn't been a stellar activation cycle in the classic sense of the term. This has been a big rescue mission this time round, for various reasons, and I mean, we might just talked about one or two of those on occasions, and we can maybe have a chat at some stage fully around why what's called Ascension Plan B had to come into place. The normal stair-step ascension wasn't entirely workable, but because things were at crisis stage, a backup plan came in, and on the back of that backup plan, we've made the shift through the ego personality matrix from that into the soul matrix. Now, we've got lots of frequencies within the soul matrix that we need to come into resonance with to begin to accrete those energies into our light body, to begin to heal aspects of our template as we do the work that's required in order to keep coming into resonance with ever higher frequencies. So there's work to be done at that level, and a lot of people are doing it. An awful lot of people are doing it, and we've talked about, what do you have to do? And it is, we've done one or two. We've talked about the Christos teachings and stuff like that. We've done one or two chats about it. Go back and look at those, but it is very, very simple and very, very difficult at the same time, because it is just about being a decent human being. It's caring for your fellow man. It's caring for nature. It's recognizing the divine in everything, the smallest bird, everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and it is, when you start to get into these flows of energy, it is a beautiful place to be. It really is. And it's, we're needing to create, not just do it for ourselves, but create that in our environment. Can you imagine if our environment is matching that resonance in, the ways of Christiac governance, the structures that we have that form our society and inform our society, and we are bathed in those energies every single day when we go out and interact, rather than the swamp, the cesspit that awaits us out there in the 3D world, the structures of the 3D world, which are really, really fighting hard not to crumble at this moment in time because they're so dissonant, so out of resonance with where we're aiming for. So, come back to epigenetics. What's your DNA going to do when it's in that kind of high frequency environment? Well, all sorts of wonderful things are going to unfold. But to get yourself there, you've got to deal with your pain body. You've got to deal with your shadow body, things that again, we've talked about this. And a lot of work has been done at that level because we have made the shift into the the lower 4D dimensions. And in fact, there's a lot of people, and I tend to see quite a lot of star seeds in the sort of work I do, talking to star seeds and things that, I'm seeing them shifting. They're readying themselves for the next stage into the oversoul or the monad level, because they're way showers. They're kind of like clearing the path and setting the energetics in place for people to follow on behind them. But the bulk of the human race are gradually sort of coming on that way, and those who utterly refuse to do it, we have this bifurcation coming up at some point in the very near future, where there will be those who want to move on will move on, and those who really either don't understand or don't want to do it, or whatever it is, don't want to be part of it, will stay where they are. But
and is it a problem that those people stay put? I mean, does it drag the rest of us down, or will we just leave them behind?
It has been a problem for a long time because it's a bit like a drag anchor. There's weight there, and you need to, much like when you're in a hot air balloon, you have to sort of dump weight out to gain height. That weight has been keeping us down, but we've reached, and that's been one of the reasons why there's been so many indigos, so many star seeds on the planet over the last 50 years, 60 years, something like that, is because they've been coming here to hold frequency, and star seeds can hold fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional frequencies, and are holding those levels on the planet at this moment. So it's kind of like pulls everybody up by their bootstraps. And those who absolutely refuse to respond to that will just kind of say, stay in the mud at the bottom, really, and there'll come a point when final liftoff occurs. And I mean, how's that going to look? I don't know. I've got lots of surmise. I can think this, I can think that, but this has never been done before. This kind of planetary ascension has never been done before. So we're all in, we're all in new territory, really.
So there is no history of the world or history of humanity where we've ever expressed our full 12-strand DNA. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, when we were first seeded on 5D Tara, obviously we had the perfected blueprint within us then, but deliberate digression by those of fallen consciousness started to come in quite quickly there. I think we've talked a little bit about Taran histories, and I've literally just finished and about to hopefully publish in the next couple of weeks the book on cosmic and galactic history that lays it all out, those stories in there of what happened on Tara. But I mean, it's been Tara, the kind of end times, if we shall say, at the 5D level of humanity on Tara at the 5D level. Part of the race was digressing badly, and part of the race was really fighting very hard and doing a lot of hard work to get back, and they did to get back into full blueprint. And then you had the fall of Tara, the explosion and the fall of Tara, and a lot of fragmented souls, morphogenetic fields and things fell into the 3D, 2D, 1D levels, and humanity has been reseeded at this lower level in order to really bring back together those fragmented templates, and gather them in and do the work of mending our DNA to get us back up there. But that's a big enough job in itself. But then what's come in from here slammed into us has been invasions by races of fallen consciousness who basically don't want us to do what would be our normal evolution back into these fields and back into this template that have just made things 10 times worse. Because what happened, I mean, the final scrambling of our DNA, the really big digression to our DNA, took place about 5,500 BC, which is, for those who've got their antenna up, is really where our kind of histories start. The rewritten histories that we're kind of told about start from about that period. But there was an engineered collapse of our magnetic field. And as a consequence of that, because we are electromagnetic being, and I mean, it wasn't as simple as that. They did all sorts of other things as well at the same time. But it's called the Babylonian Sumerian invasion in the kind of like timeline. But it absolutely wiped out. It unplugged some of the lower levels, the fifth, sixth, fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional levels of our DNA. And as a consequence, we lost our race memory. We also lost our racial language. I mean, the Bible tells us, and, we do get hints of these things in something like the Bible, that, mankind originally could communicate anywhere on the planet with another human being through some people say it was through light language, or there was a common language at some level. This unplugging of those levels of DNA was catastrophic, because we lost not just our racial memories, we lost also our common language in that. So we were kind of like, think of us like an amnesiac accident victim. And then in swoops these gods, inverted commas, and, we will save you sort of thing. And they teach us all these different languages, and they teach us this history of who we really are when we're really not that at all. And, tell us that they've created us, and, they're our creator gods and all of this kind of stuff. We have nothing to compare it against, because, the file's been wiped clean. We can't get into the records to sort of say, oh, there's something wrong here. Oops, I've lost you. Your sound's off.
And I think therein lies the problem, Sarah, isn't it? Because humans are incredibly intelligent. We're incredibly curious. We're incredibly able, I think, to have an idea suggested to us and then go, oh, wow, but when we can't remember, like you say, we're like the amnesia victim. It's like all of us kind of scrabbling around in the dark, not entirely sure why we're trying to ascend, which is what this conversation is about. So maybe, some imaginings around things. And like you say, those little tiny glimmers of what we might have been able to do. It's like sort of dusting off, the tiniest ember, just kind of fanning on it and seeing what it might be. Because I'm sure if we could find some way of suggesting to humans what we are truly capable of, it's aspirational then, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And
it's
you know what you're going towards. This is why, for me, an important part of my reason for being here is pulling these stories back out of the fields once more, because they're there in the information fields that we used to be plugged into at these different levels, and could draw it from that. But it's also been very messed about with so many artificial timelines, so many artificial storylines inserted into them. So it's been a process of extracting, literally trying to you know, find that thread of truth and extract it out of all of this mess of lies and deceit. And you know, this is what the books I'm writing are about. And as I say, the next one is really going to be all about the earth. I was talking to Wendy about this just before we came on, wasn't I? The next one's going to be all the earth stories, which is really gets you know, down and dirty with where we're at now, sort of thing, talking about you know, because our history, I said to you, our history on this planet goes back nearly 1 million years.
Wow.
And we're really only given, you know, 5,000, 6,000 years worth of it, and told that, you know, we were scrabbling around in animal skins before then, sort of using stone axes and things like this, when there have been the most amazing civilizations on this planet. And we see subtle glimpses of that, you know, buried in the oceans, or, you know, some of the very ancient sites where you know, there's just this amazing architecture, things we can't do now, things we don't understand. We're seeing these physical artifacts, and modern archaeology just dismisses them because it can't explain them, so it just pretends it's not there, you know.
And that doesn't help our amnesia, does it?
It doesn't help us at all, no.
Help us to expand and put things together in new ways, or become curious, or like say, wow, that's amazing. And you know, because if we could acknowledge these things rather than just turning away from them because it's not convenient in the historical timeline, then that in itself would be expansive, wouldn't it? And I guess that's why people are making programs about it, and they're starting to talk about it. So
and
it's
there's,
all
you know, there's a load on YouTube. There's so much stuff now on YouTube. There's new stuff going up every single day. A lot of it is designed to obfuscate and to take, you know, to reiterate wrong information and things like that. Again, this is part of the trying to keep the animals on the farm. And then, you know, Dee and me are left with trying to figure out, well, what's worth watching here?
Yes, exactly.
Again, it's a very deliberate, just mix it all up again, you know, it's wicked. It's wicked.
Well, Sarah, this has been fascinating. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with this particular part? So the sort of the what is ascension, and what is the ascension mechanics? Is there anything else that we need to
I think I haven't mentioned fire letters, have I?
No.
Just really just talk about that, because as I say, ascension really is about rebuilding our DNA. It's plugging our DNA back in. It's going back, it's retrieving our divine blueprint, going back into our divine blueprint. And you know, we're doing that, we strand by strand by strand. So from 3 strands, and those who say, oh, well, there's only 2 strands in you know, that DNA that you can look at under a microscope. A lot of these strands are etheric, because we go into 4th, 5th, 6th dimensional. We're becoming semi-etheric, etc. On and on. This is, I mean, there's just a lot here that our science doesn't get and doesn't understand. You hear references to this, that in some ancient texts there was some understanding at one point in ancient texts. You can pick up coded information to this, but modern science is very directed. It's very establishment. It's very, you know, you get money if you go down this route and you tell this story. You don't get money, you lose your reputation, etc., etc., if you go down this route. So it's very controlled. Be very aware of that. That the narratives are very, very controlled. So we are trying to put our DNA back together. I mean, one of the things that requires is each strand has what are called fire letters attached to it, and there are 12 sets of 2-strand DNA to be sort of replugged in, and there are 12 fire letters within each strand. And one of the things that this unplugging of DNA did, it scrambled the fire letters. So part of the process of reactivating each strand of DNA is really sorting the fire letters back into their coherent form. And again, you do that through the way you choose to live and be, you know, the energy you plug into, and how you handle yourself in the world. And that doesn't come through, you know, dropping bombs on people and
Yeah.
you know, putting people down and blah, 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 violence and yeah, just the kind of nastiness that we see going on every single day in our governments, you know.
So the better way of living will begin to unscramble these fire letters by themselves. It's just a natural sort of beneficial side effect of living
It,
well, is it?
you know, it comes back to one of the universal laws, which is, you know, the law of vibration. But, you know, it's about resonance. Are you in resonance with this or not? And as you come back into resonance with certain things, it's kind of like, you know, the crumples in the paper begin to iron out, as it were.
Yeah.
Or things naturally begin to align themselves. Now, there are some, you know, we're going to talk about this. We're going to do a series of just 4 chats around, you know, Ascension Mechanics or the Science of Ascension. One of the things we're going to talk about in one of the talks is going to be seals and implants, because those are nasties that are put in to trip us up. Again, put into light body and things like that, and into the planet to trip us up. But yeah, I think that's and it's also saying as well that you know, we're not just digressed at a DNA level, but we should have let me think, how many is it? It's 144. We at the moment, I'm talking chromosomes, sorry, my head's racing ahead of me. I'm talking chromosomes. At the moment, we have, I think it's 23 chromosomes. With a 3-strand DNA, we should have 36 chromosomes.
Oh,
With
wow.
12-strand DNA, we should have 144 chromosomes. So you can see there's a lot we need to recover.
There really is, isn't there?
And that's,
So,
you know, it's going to come with sorting, you know, the fire letters becoming unjumbled, with the frequency accretions into each strand of DNA, bit by bit by bit. It's like untangling a ball of wool.
well, we have a way to go, but we have a way to go, which is to go with what feels in service to humanity and the planet. And I mean that, you know, that starts with ourselves, doesn't it? Being in service to ourselves, being in alignment, doing the work, the shadow work, the pain body work, and then, you know, really, I guess, feeling into and activating and acting on ways in which we can do good things.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so it's a good news story, really.
It is.
No
I mean,
guarantees, is there,
yeah,
about where we're going, but you know, we don't like the way we're going at the moment, so it's all to play for.
yeah, yeah. You know, and you know, most people are decent.
Hmm.
And it's just, you know, we have to foster and find ways of living and being in societal structures that just foster an awful lot more of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, I'm full of optimism. I really am. We've been you know, we've been through the darkest point. We're coming out the other side. There is light. There's sunlight ahead. Very, very definitely. There's sunlight ahead. So yeah.
Well, I shall have fun trying to imagine what we can do with that full complement of DNA strands, Sarah. It sounds very exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Thank
we'll
you.
finish this here, shall we?
Yeah.
And, yeah, we'll go on to the next one. I think we'll talk about planetary ascension. What does planetary ascension mean? Because that's also a big part of what we've been trying to do here as well. But we'll finish it here for now, and we'll see you on the next one. So thank you, Wendy, and thank you everyone for listening. Bye.